Mandatory minicamp day 2 was supposed to be routine. Instead, got a little bit reckless, and now Washington has an injury problem. That and more right now on Locked On Commanders.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into Locked On Commanders, where we watch the film, break down the data, and call it like we see it. I'm your host, David Harrison. This is your daily podcast covering the Washington Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Not only am I here with you 5 days a week, but I'm also covering the Commanders for Sports Illustrated's CommanderGameDay.com and WUSA9.com. I want to thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen or view today. Whether you're an everydayer or just coming through for this episode, I appreciate you. But to the everydayers, a special thank you to you for coming through every single day. Everybody out there, if you're not already, please subscribe for free on YouTube or wherever you're listening to this episode. And if it is your first time, thank you for finding us. Hopefully you like what you hear and you come back again for more real soon. Coming up on today's episode, offensive lineman Brandon Coleman's position shift reveals more than just depth chart tinkering. Jacory Croskey-Merritt flashes in a crowded running back room, and a dangerous collision has left Noah Brown carted off during a minicamp that got a little too physical. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. What was supposed to be a structured minicamp practice took a little bit of an unexpected turn when Noah Brown and Will Harris, the safety, collided, and Noah Brown ended up having to be carted off the practice field. It wasn't the only moment, however, that things got a little too physical on Wednesday afternoon, and it raises some fair questions about how intense is too intense this early in the offseason. Look, we've been praising the Washington Commanders for their desire to be intense, to be as physical as you possibly can in a phase of the offseason where there's no contact, there's no tackling, there's no all that stuff. And that praise stands. This is not revisionist history here. You love seeing a team get after it. You love seeing a team go out there and want to compete. But there has to be a limit. There has to be a line drawn. And on Wednesday, that line got crossed. And it's going to be up to the people who evaluate this kind of stuff to determine how far that line got crossed. But the line got crossed. And listen, before the Noah Brown injury even happened, there were plays happening that not just me, but other people who were observing, and I'll let them speak for themselves on their individual platforms if they so choose to take that route. But I can just tell you right now that it wasn't just me. We're noticing a little bit of chippiness, a little bit of more contact than I think you would usually desire. And it was kind of like, all right, guys, like just remember, this is the same team here, and you're all building towards the same goal. And then the Noah Brown injury happens. And that's just kind of, and you hate it because it's not a moment where you're like, oh, see, I saw something like that coming. That to me, that kind of behavior is not necessary. And it's a little bit, I'll say disgusting for lack of a better term. I don't think it's like fully to that level of disgusting, but nobody should be patting themselves on the back for saying I was watching the practice, thinking he was getting too physical, and then boom, I was proven right by the Noah Brown injury. It's just a simple observation colliding with another player. Look, safety Will Harris, he's a veteran, been around the NFL, not his first time around a mandatory minicamp, nothing intended by it. No callousness, no intent to harm or injure or anything like that. Just being aggressive, going out there, being aggressive. But we heard coaches talk about this before we started this minicamp, talking about, look, there's going to be what I call practice completions, right? And these practice completions are plays that we would make a physical play on, maybe even collide with the receiver, hit him as the ball arrives, things like that, but we're not going to. We're going to peel back and let the receiver make the reception because we're on the same team. Today, that kind of went out the window a little bit in this Will Harris situation where he makes contact with Noah Brown and Noah Brown ends up injured is the exact example of that. And I'm telling you right now, I don't know what it's going to be, but I would be very, very surprised if the Washington Commanders did not receive a punishment from the National Football League for this happening. This is not supposed to happen during this phase. And honestly, it's a little bit reminiscent of a few years ago where Jeremy Reeves inadvertently collided with De'Ami Brown. De'Ami Brown went down. Fortunately, De'Ami wasn't, severely injured or injured for an extended period of time. I know that Revo felt really bad for the play and all those things. And again, there's no, I want to make it very, very clear. There was no intent here. There was no nothing. Don't go after Will Harris talking about, oh, this and this and this. This was two players playing aggressively, and it went over the line. But this is much more serious because, like I said, Noah Brown was down on the field for a period of time, an extended period of time, being looked at, got to the sideline, slammed his helmet out of frustration and anger, was dealing with trainers on the sideline behind the defense. Eventually, a cart came out to get him, took him back to the locker room, and you could hear and see the frustration of Noah Brown as he's entering the locker room for further evaluation. And you don't cart a player off for nothing. You know what I mean? Look, I don't want to get too crazy about it. I'm not a doctor. I don't know exactly which body part. The way that the collision happened, there's kind of like a whiplashing type of effect. So it could be literally concussion. It could be neck. It could be shoulder. It could be back. It could be lower body. Came to the ground, went to the ground. It could be lower body. Like literally, it could be anything. What you're hoping for is that it's not incredibly severe, but I'm just telling you from the vibe in the moment and the moments that led after it, and even up to the end of the practice, if you're a Commanders fan and you're a Noah Brown fan, which I am, just the young man himself, you know what I mean? Just everything he's been through, my heart is already dropped for Noah Brown. And I'm bracing for some really bad news on Thursday or at some point in time in the very near future once the Commanders know the full extent. What happened would be through the roof if it wasn't very bad news, but it just feels like very bad news is coming for Noah Brown. So that's this kind of the main situation we need to talk about here to start off this episode. It's the unfortunate news that you don't want to talk about. It's absolutely the news you don't want to have during this time period, but it is important. We expect to hear from Dan Quinn. Well, we are going to hear from Dan Quinn ahead of practice on day 3. Obviously, the question will be asked. I don't know if Coach Quinn is just going to know that the question is coming and give us whatever he's going to give us for that time. I will tell you that, teams are not required to disclose injuries during this phase. I did get a question from a couple of insiders about IR. If this is an injury that's going to put Noah Brown on the injured reserve, then the team would have to disclose what the injury is and all that stuff. So then we would find out. But it is possible if it's an injury that's not necessarily going to take him, out of a certain amount of time that, DQ, he knows how to do his job. So I'm not going to sit here and speculate about how he's going to do his job, but he'll tell us what he needs to, what he believes he should tell us within the parameters of what the NFL requires, and we'll go from there. But I'm just letting you know transparently, honestly, I do not think good news is coming, unfortunately, for Noah Brown. And you don't want to have any player, obviously, but Noah Brown, certainly a guy that you just hate to see it for him, man. Your heart goes out to him, and unfortunately, that's not really going to do anything for him to help him. But if there's a player out there that just cannot catch a break, Noah Brown is certainly one of those players. From a fluke internal body injury last year to now this, it's not good, man. He's looked good too. Like he's made some plays. We talked about the play he made in the end zone to catch a touchdown pass from Jaden. You know what I mean? It's just terrible, man. But like I said, it wasn't the only instance, right? Tyler Owens, safety, chased down Luke McCaffrey after a play. You guys have seen practices before. Player makes a catch, runs the play out. They typically don't sprint like full speed. Tyler Owens was in coverage on a Luke McCaffrey catch. Luke turns upfield, starts running it out. Tyler Owens stayed with him, ran down the field with him as well. They end up getting tangled up. It wasn't a tackle, but they end up getting tangled up, and Luke goes down to the ground. Tyler goes down to the ground. They get up, and you can kind of see just from I don't know what they said to each other, but from body language, you can kind of see Tyler being like, oh, like my bad. And you can kind of see Luke, what the heck, bro? Like just kind of body language. That was an example. Frankie Louvu out there with a little bit extra juice, kind of body checking some guys a couple of times, shoulder checking some guys a couple of times. Multiple players going to the ground during the practice, not injured, but going to the ground. You're not supposed to be going to the ground during this phase. So like I said, man, I'm all about intensity. And, if you watch the first practice of the mini camp, you could walk away saying the offense won. But I mean, so did the defensive staff, kind of get after their players and say, look, like you got to show more intensity the next day. Maybe, you know what I mean? I don't know. But if they did, like it's a step too far as I'm concerned. And again, this is a conversation that many, multiple media members along with myself were having before the injury happened. So this is not just, well, now that there's an injury, now we think they went too far. No, like before the injury happened, we were talking about it on the sideline. So, is it to the extent of like losing control? No, I don't think they lost control. I think they just went a little bit over the line. Like it wasn't like they were out there, like again, like just completely like beating up on dudes, right? I don't want to get it to sound too crazy, but they went over the line. even just a little bit. And when you go over that line just a little bit, these are the type of things that unfortunately can happen. So we'll see if Dan Quinn or what Dan Quinn has to say tomorrow before practice, but this was not your typical day 2 of mandatory minicamp. Just tell you that right now. While the defense was flying around and emotions were at moments running high, one rookie on the other side of the ball quietly made his case with speed, vision, and maturity beyond his level of experience. He started to look a little bit more like your average, a little bit more than your average 7th round draft pick. That and more coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode of Locked On Commanders is brought to you by Skylight. We've been talking all episode about structure, how Washington is trying to build it in the trenches, manage it with young players, and still control intensity during minicamp. And let's be honest, managing a household, not that different. Say goodbye to sticky notes, scribbled fridge plans, and overlapping calendar invites. The Skylight calendar is here to bring clarity to your chaos and help families stay organized without the stress. This sleek digital display syncs with your existing calendars, Google, Apple, Outlook, and more, so you can finally see everything in one place. What would it mean for you to eliminate the I don't know excuse from your family's routine, or assign everyone their own color and cut out the who does what confusion before it starts? Trust me, seeing your entire week clearly on a 15-inch HD screen makes a huge difference. Right now, Skylight is offering our listeners $30 off their 15-inch calendars by going to skylightcal.com/NFL. That's skylightcal.com/NFL for $30 off. That's skylightcal.com/NFL. Amidst the intensity and physicality of day 2, one of the cleanest performances came from rookie running back Jacory Croskey-Merritt, who showed quick feet, sharp vision, and the kind of mindset that could earn him a real shot come training camp. So Jacory Croskey-Merritt, look, he's been exciting. Everybody's been excited about him since he got drafted. He's only built that excitement through OTAs and even into this mandatory minicamp. He's looking good. He's looking smooth in individual drills, in the 11-on-11s, all that stuff. Again, remember, like, even with some of the more physical play coming today, not to the point where, D linemen are sticking their face in the hole, in the gap against a running back and just, locking them up, things like that. But Jacory Croskey-Merritt, there was one very specific run rep, not a lot of run reps in these 11-on-11s, but there are some that Jacory, we talked about before, and Jacory's going to talk about here in a second in a clip, where he just, really smooth cut, man, really good eyes, smooth cut into the hole and acceleration through the hole. It was just very impressive. And if it looks like that when the pads come on, I can tell you right now, the fans out there who are immensely excited, I know some fans are already calling Jacory is going to be the RB1 and Brian Robinson Jr. is going to be the RB2. I wouldn't go that far. We'll talk a little bit more about how far I would go with Jacory, but I wouldn't go that far with Jacory Croskey-Merritt, at least not at this time yet. But here is a little bit on Jacory. Like I said, we talked about the value of doing non-padded, non-contact run plays in OTA's mandatory minicamp. And just to get a player's perspective, which pretty much lines up with mine that I gave you guys in the episode, but to get a player's perspective, I asked Jacory about that. So here he is talking about that topic.
So we saw some 11-on-11 run plays, right? No pads, non-contact, all that stuff. Where's the value for a running back, though, still getting those run reps with no pads, no contact?
It still shows what you can do without pads on. If you can hit a hole without pads on, I don't think too much going to change, like, when the pads come on. I think it's more of a coach is saying, like, your vision or, like, what you can do, how creative you can be with the ball. So, I look at it all as the same, like I got pads on. I don't feel like nothing going to change.
All right. Once again, that was Washington Commanders 7th round rookie running back Jacory Croskey-Merritt talking about the value that you can get as a running back from running the ball in 11-on-11s, even during non-contact, non-padded phase of the offense. And that is, again, where he's kind of standing out, right? Like, you look at the individual drills and, look, they're nice, and he looks smooth. He looks confident. Feet are good. Body positioning is good. Not getting a lot of corrections, but when he does get a correction here and there, comes back through the line, does it right the next time. And that's what you love to see out of a young guy. And then, just talking to him, we got to interview him multiple times this offseason, at least a few times this offseason, but also talking to him outside the interview environment. Just definitely a very mature young man. You can tell, you talk about Dan Quinn and Adam Peters talking about what is a commander. There's a theme kind of brewing here, right? You saw it with Mikey Sanders still. You see with all these guys, Brandon Coleman coming up here in just a minute as well. maturity and the understanding of what's best for the team and having that mindset of, what's best for us is what's best for me. And I'm going to do what I have to do in order to do that. Even if that means mentally change positions twice in one off season. We'll talk about that here in just a little bit. So, the full blown interview, which I will upload sometime after minicamp wraps, all these interviews that I've been able to get with some of these assistant coaches and these players, you're seeing clips of them. I'm going to upload the full interviews at some point, so you'll be able to come through and see all of them for yourself. But we talked to Jacory about competition. We talked to him about being treated like a pro, adjusting to NFL speed. I think that's really kind of the first thing that pretty much every NFL player talks about is the speed of the game is what really strikes you from college to the pros. And again, in college, it's not a knock. Like there's a lot of us, myself included, who never made it to even college football. Like there's definitely a talent level just to get to college football. But then when you get to college, there's another talent level for the guys who are just going to have been college players and they're going to go out and be accountants, journalists, maybe, I don't know, doctors, teachers, whatever they're going to be. And then there's guys who are going to go to the NFL. And once you get to the NFL now, everybody is here. So really, because even the Ohio States, Alabamas, all that stuff of the college football landscape, not all of their players are going to the NFL. You know what I mean? Like there are players that play for these power schools that don't make it to the league. So even when you play against one of those guys or one of those teams, you're not playing a team full of NFL players, right? Now you're playing a team full of NFL players. Like every single guy out there is an NFL player. So that's usually the first thing. But something that really stood out with my conversation about Anthony Lynn, I asked him kind of a similar question. Like, how do you teach these young running backs how to sift through the noise and make their way through the debris and everything else and find the holes? And he said he teaches the rookies like he teaches the pros. He teaches, or the vets, he teaches them all the same. He treats them all the same. He teaches them all the same. Ask Jacory how it feels to have a coach, a running backs coach, who's not going to, whether it's kid gloves, right, too soft because he's a rookie or overly harsh because he's a rookie. And he said it feels, it's great. It gives him a lot of confidence in the coaching. And again, when that interview gets fully uploaded, you'll be able to hear that from him himself. But basically the quote is, we are all professional athletes. Wouldn't want it any other way. And definitely you see the respect he has for Coach Lynn for treating him like he's an NFL player, because he is an NFL player. Now, as far as the intrigue on where he might end up, I already said, I'm not on this train of Jacory Croskey-Merritt, RB1, in his first season, all that stuff. I definitely believe I'm with you where I think that you see that RB1 potentially turn on his college tape. It's electric. It's exciting. But I think that some of the excitement has gone a little bit too far. But guess what? Fan is short for fanatic. Go fanatical. If you're a Jacory Croskey fan, RB1, all that stuff, hey, do your thing. Shout it from the rooftops. I'm a media member. I'm going to tell you the unbiased, balanced truth. And I'm just telling you that we just haven't seen enough, not because he couldn't do enough, but because this phase of the offseason, you can't see enough from a guy to say Jacory Croskey-Merritt is going to be RB1. It's kind of the same thing with Brian Robinson Jr. When he came out as a rookie out of Alabama during this phase of his season, it was, hey, the young man looks really good. Certainly is going to be a solid number 2 for this team. And then you get to training camp, it's like, oh, hold up, this dude might be number 1. Jacory Croskey-Merritt right now, I think he definitely looks like a solid active roster player. What does that mean? I think he's RB3. I think right now, the season were to start tomorrow, Jacory Croskey-Merritt is your RB3. Brian Robinson's your 1, Austin Eckler is your 2, Jacory Croskey-Merritt is your 3. And I would not be surprised. I don't know if I'm going to predict it on the active roster projection episode coming later in the offseason or the preseason, but I would not be surprised if this Commanders team carries 4 running backs. And that last spot going between Demetric Felton, Chris Rodriguez Jr., or Jeremy McNichols. And because of the injuries they suffered last year, because of the wear and tear they suffered last year, I just would not be surprised to see this staff keep a 4th running back. And if that's the case, I don't know really who I would have as the favorite right now. But those are kind of the guys I look at as the front runners, those 3 guys. And then 2 of them probably one of them probably ends up on the practice squad along with guys like Michael Wiley. And the other one probably ends up either released or traded to a team that might be able to use their services. So I think that's kind of how the running back room is going to break down. We'll talk about all these position groups later on during the offseason here between the end of minicamp and the beginning of training camp. I can tell you already, Jeremy McNichols, that veteran savvy, still there, still looks smooth, still looks clean. Chris Rodriguez, his body is transforming. He's dropped 10 pounds this offseason. And he's continuing to lose more, trying to get more, a little bit slender, but also trying to just get a little bit more agile, show some bounce, right? He made a really good catch in 11-on-11s today and is doing some good things as well. So while Croskey-Merritt is making a case with his quickness and his confidence and his maturity, another young player is adjusting by shifting positions entirely. And the move inside can tell us a lot about how Washington is building their offensive line for the long haul. That's coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And this episode of Locked On Commanders is brought to you by FanDuel. We've been talking about guys making a name for themselves in high-pressure moments, and whether it's Jacory Croskey-Merritt flashing in camp or Brandon Coleman making a somewhat quiet move inside, sometimes you just got to trust what you're seeing and bet on it. The same goes for NBA playoffs, where breakout players, clutch shots, and massive momentum shifts are happening every single night. And if you've got a read on who's heating up, why not back it up with a same-game parlay on FanDuel? FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. You can combine player props and track trends as they unfold in real time. That means if someone's catching fire in the second quarter, you're not stuck watching. You can act on it and get into the action. If you're new to FanDuel, right now is the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com, place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Again, bet $5. If it wins, $200 in bonus bets if it's your first bet. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Brandon Coleman didn't need a meeting with the Washington Commanders to know what was coming. The moment Washington drafted Josh Connerly Jr., he knew a move to guard was likely, and that quiet transition might end up saying more about the team's long-term plans than any depth chart run. So Brandon Coleman here in this clip, I asked him about when he knew he was moving inside, at what point in the offseason, and you're going to hear from the big man himself. Exactly when he heard Josh Connerly's name called is when he knew that move was coming.
When did you know entering the offseason, or what point in the offseason did you know you kind of needed to start getting acclimated back to playing inside?
I was really, the first time I knew I was probably going to head inside was when I saw that Josh got drafted. I mean, I didn't hear about that at all, which is cool. Like, I don't have to. But I was watching the draft. I know I was just tuning in, like, hat on in the back, me and my girl. And then we heard Josh Connerly. I was like, that's a tackle. Yeah. It might happen. And then, I got called up, got a call from DQ, AP. So, I mean, it was cool. Like, they always keep me in the loop about everything. Even when we got LT, they told me, hey, you probably don't kick in to right tackle, like, right after they, like, did the negotiations with him. So they did a good job of letting me know, so that way I had the offseason a little bit work on guard and kind of get myself up to speed, my body back into it before I headed up here.
So that is Washington Commanders guard Brandon Coleman talking about the switch. And I think what really stood out to me is, one, the light nature of it, the like, whoa, I heard Josh Connerly's name. I'm like, that's tackle. I'm probably moving inside. And then just hearing the conversation, right? AP and Dan Quinn letting Brandon Coleman, like, hey, we're bringing in Laramie Tunsil, so you're probably kicking over to right tackle. And he starts, mentally preparing for that. Then he hears Josh Connerly's name get called. He goes, whoa, I'm probably moving into guard. Then he gets the call, hey, you're going to move into guard. Start mentally preparing for that. And just having that maturity, having that resiliency to be able to just kind of like roll with it, right? Like, this dude literally just changed positions twice in one off season, and he's just smiling. He's like, yeah, it's no big deal. We'll make it happen. Now, the good news, of course, part of that reason he's so resilient about it is because he played guard in college. He's played inside before. He knows how to do this and all that stuff. But he did talk about the speed of the game. I asked him, and again, we'll upload the full interview for you guys at another time. But the speed of the game, is something that he had to get used to as well. And he said that transitioning from outside to inside, like getting that tackle experience is going to kind of help him understand what that tackle next to him is doing at a speed in the National Football League. And you think that's going to be something that he can really lean on. I asked him about his anchor. We've talked about that a lot about Brandon Coleman. Like, if there's one strongest part about Brandon Coleman's game, it is his anchor. It is his ability to withstand a bull rush, speed to power, all that stuff, and just be able to lock a dude down. And he basically said inside, that's literally what it's all about. Going up against the Dexter Lawrences of the world, Jalen Carters of the world, that's what you're going to need. And I think that, Brandon Coleman, outside of Sam Cosmi, probably the best anchor on the inside, judging from his rookie tape. So I think that's going to serve him really, really well. And then he also said that vets, Andrew Wiley's played guard. Laramie Tunsil has been around a while. Trent Scott, guard, tackle, versatile, right? They're all helping him out with the transition and making sure that he's doing the right thing. I think that's kind of the point there. You're very, very quietly seeing Washington build a lot of offensive line flexibility, right? Andrew Wiley's getting reps at left tackle, getting reps at right tackle. He's played guard. Trent Scott has played tackle, guard, tight end, right? He was an eligible receiver, caught Jaden Daniels' first ever career touchdown pass, right? Like, And now Brandon Coleman has already had some of the outside inside versatility coming from college, but now he's going to have the outside inside experience in the National Football League. I think you're building a very, very versatile offensive line with depth, and I don't think it's by accident. So we'll talk more about Josh Connolly's development. We'll talk more about Laramie Tunsil's role and absence. Didn't practice at all on day 2 of the mandatory minicamp. Don't expect him to probably practice much of it all on day 3 of the mandatory minicamp, but that is going to do it for today's episode. A practice that brought intensity, a little too much contact, in my opinion, and a few important clues about how Washington is shaping its depth and identity. Coming up next on Locked On Commanders, we're going to wrap up mandatory minicamp. Final thoughts from head coach Dan Quinn. Hopefully an injury update on Noah Brown and a closer look at Jeremy Reeves getting a 1-year extension. That's how much we had to talk about today, is that Jeremy Reeves getting his extension didn't even make it into this episode, but it is going to make it into our next episode, his impact and everything it means from him. We talked to him again after practice as well, so make sure you come back for that. In the meantime, if you got questions or comments, you can text them to me directly by becoming a Locked On Commanders insider at joinsubtext.com/Locked On Commanders. For your next listen, check out Locked On NFL Scouting with Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino. Training camp is getting closer. Roster moves are going to keep coming, and they're going to help you stay the most informed NFL fans around. You can find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you're getting this podcast. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Commanders your first listen of the day, every day. To all the everydayers, we see you, we appreciate you, and I personally send you a big thank you. Until next time, stay safe, be good to each other. We'll talk again soon right here on Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.